The summer sun blazed like a personal vendetta that afternoon, casting long golden streaks across my backyard while cicadas screamed their usual warnings from the trees. I was knee-deep in a pile of mulch, sweat dripping off my nose, trying to plant a few juniper bushes near the back fence when the unmistakable thump-thump-thump of a helicopter's rotors cracked open the sky. I shaded my eyes with a dirt-covered glove and looked up, expecting a traffic chopper or some lost tourist in a news copter, but no, it was an emergency rescue helicopter, the kind you only see in wildfire zones or disaster documentaries. Its red and white exterior shimmered against the blue sky as it dipped lower, scanning the woods beyond my property. What I didn't expect, what no one could have expected, was the sound of gunfire. Not distant, not echoing off a canyon or coming from someone's poorly timed backyard celebration. No, this was sharp, close, and all too real. The kind of sound that slices through the air and makes your brain skip a beat before it catches up with panic. I ducked instinctively, nearly knocking over the wheelbarrow, heart racing. And then I saw her. Standing on the second-story balcony of her cookie-cutter beige house, not 200 feet away, was Karen. No nickname, no exaggeration. Her name was actually Karen Whitmore, president of our HOA, queen of the bylaws, and sworn enemy of anything resembling freedom or personal happiness. And in her hands? A rifle. Not a toy, not a prop. A full-on bolt-action hunting rifle with the sun glinting off the scope. She had it aimed at the sky like she was the last line of defense in a zombie apocalypse. Time slowed as I stared, dumbstruck, watching her track the chopper through the air like it had personally insulted her hedges. The shot had definitely come from her direction, and as I stood frozen in my grass-stained cargo shorts, I saw her fire again, this time with even more fury, like the very presence of that life-saving helicopter above her HOA kingdom was an unforgivable offense. The helicopter veered off, rising higher, faster, peeling away like a spooked bird. It didn't crash, thank God, but it wobbled enough to make my stomach drop. I could see someone leaning out from the side, probably trying to spot where the gunfire was coming from, but they gave up quickly. The pilot made the smart call and bolted toward the ridge, leaving a trail of wind and disbelief in its wake. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Had I just witnessed a federal crime from the comfort of my backyard tomato patch? My phone was in my tool belt. My hands were shaking. I pulled it out, started dialing 911, but even as the call rang through, I could see Karen lowering the rifle casually, as if she'd just swatted a fly. No panic. No remorse. Just another Tuesday in suburbia. 911, what's your emergency? I stammered, still staring across the fence. I think my HOA president just shot at a rescue helicopter. There was a pause on the other end, not long but definitely there. The kind of pause that says, wait, run that back one more time? Yes, ma'am, I added, breath catching in my throat. I'm not joking. She has a rifle. She fired at a helicopter. I saw it. I rattled off my address. The dispatcher's tone changed immediately. Stay on the line. Officers are being dispatched. Do not approach the subject. Like I was planning to go over and borrow a cup of sugar from the lunatic with a loaded gun. My eyes flicked back to her house. She was already gone, probably inside alphabetizing the HOA rulebook or sharpening her complaints. And I was left holding the phone, my garden forgotten, the air thick with something worse than summer humidity, disbelief, fear, and the sinking feeling that my quiet little corner of paradise had just gone full crazy town. Because this wasn't just a neighborly dispute or some petty lawn decoration fine. This was a woman who believed the sky itself needed her permission to pass overhead. And she'd just declared war on a rescue helicopter. Let me rewind for a second. Not too far, just enough to explain how the hell I ended up with an HOA president firing bullets over my tomato garden like she was reenacting Red Dawn. My name's Jake. I'm a single dad, part-time software consultant, and full-time appreciator of peace and quiet. A year ago, I sold my cramped condo in the city and bought this ranch-style home on the edge of the valley, where property lines came with real fences and neighbors waved instead of glared. At least that was the plan. The house needed work, sure. The porch slanted a bit, the kitchen was stuck in the 90s, and the backyard looked like it had lost a fight with a lawnmower in 2007 and never recovered. But it was mine. No more landlords. No more stacked units. Just sky, space, and the occasional owl hooting like it ran the HOA. Ironic in hindsight. Enter Karen Whitmore. The name alone should tell you everything. She came with the property like a curse built into the soil. Her house sat diagonally behind mine, raised slightly on a hill like a throne overlooking the lesser beings below. Her driveway was always pressure-washed. Her mailbox had decorative bronze vines. Her roses were pruned with surgical precision. And her attitude? Like she invented suburbia and we were all squatters trespassing on her legacy. She knocked on my door the day after I moved in. Not with cookies. Not with a welcome to the neighborhood. No, she handed me a printed copy of the HOA bylaws inside a manila folder with laminated tabs. I noticed you haven't installed the regulation-compliant mailbox yet, she said, smiling tightly like it hurt her face. Just trying to help you avoid fines. Fines. On day 2. I hadn't even finished unpacking my socks. I tried to laugh it off, thanked her, and gently explained that I'd be taking care of it when I had a chance. Her smile didn't budge, but her eyes said something else. We'll see about that. Over the next few months, the letters started coming. First about the mailbox, then about my trash cans not being pulled in fast enough, then about unauthorized lawn structures, which turned out to be a wheelbarrow I'd left near the garden beds for 2 days. 2 days. According to Karen, that was the HOA equivalent of a nuclear threat. I wasn't the only target either. The Wilsons down the street got fined for having a basketball hoop visible from the road. The Olivers had their holiday decorations reported, excessive illumination. She even tried to cite old Mr. Hawthorne for his wind chimes. The guy's legally blind and they help him navigate his own porch, but Karen decided they were a sound nuisance. And somehow she always had board votes to back her up. Probably because the board was just her and 2 retired friends who shared a love for bylaws and absolutely nothing else. People started calling her HOA Karen behind her back. It wasn't creative, but it was accurate. To her face, everyone was polite. Terrified really because Karen played dirty. She knew every code, every clause, every loophole. She once wrote someone up for excessive moss. Moss. In the Pacific Northwest. That's like citing someone for sunlight in Arizona. But me? I tried to keep the peace. I figured if I just nodded, complied with the little things, she'd get bored and move on. I was wrong. Because when you give a control freak an inch, she takes your property line and paints it red. Figuratively until now. My son Tyler came home from college around that time, pre-med student, smart as hell, and thankfully got more patience from his mom than from me. He took one look at the compliance notices taped to our door and said, "Dad, why does your neighborhood feel like a gated prison without the gates?" I laughed. Because the warden lives behind us and carries a clipboard. We joked about it, at first. But the truth was, it was starting to get under my skin. The constant nitpicking. The letters. The petty fines. The sense that I wasn't living in my own home, just renting space in Karen's dictatorship. I worked hard to buy this place. Tyler helped paint the garage himself last summer. We built a chicken coop together, named our hens after 90 Seconds pop stars, and even fixed up the back fence. It was supposed to be ours. A place to breathe. Instead, it felt like I was being surveilled by a suburban big brother in beige slacks. So when Karen lifted that rifle on her balcony and pointed it skyward, I wasn't even surprised. Horrified. Absolutely. But surprised? Not really. Because if anyone in this neighborhood was going to declare themselves the final authority on what flies over her airspace, it was going to be Karen Whitmore, president of the Golden Valley Meadows HOA, self-appointed guardian of decency, order, and absolutely zero fun. And I had a feeling things were about to get a whole lot worse. The funny thing is, the conflict didn't start with the helicopter. It didn't even start with anything that dramatic. It started with paint. Specifically, the paint I chose for my back patio fence. A mild, earthy shade of green, olive drab if we're being technical, meant to blend in with the trees behind my lot. I thought I was doing something nice. Natural. Easy on the eyes. But apparently to Karen, it was the equivalent of graffiti tagging her neighborhood's soul. The letter came 2 days after the last brushstroke dried. It was written in all caps, classic Karen move, and stapled to my door with a little note at the bottom. Per HOA regulations, fences must be painted white. Page 43, Section 12C. I remember standing there with that paper in one hand and a half-empty coffee mug in the other, rereading it like it might turn into a joke if I looked long enough. What? In a backyard bordered by forest and red clay? It would stand out like a wedding dress in a mud fight. That's when it began, the real conflict. Not just between me and Karen, but between the life I thought I'd bought and the one I was apparently leasing from the Church of HOA Orthodoxy. And I'm not proud of what I did next, but I wasn't about to roll over either. I wrote her back. Type. Formal. Straight from my inner smartass. Dear Ms. Whitmore, thank you for your note. While I appreciate your dedication to aesthetic consistency, I was unable to find the aforementioned Section 12C in the HOA handbook you previously supplied. If you could kindly point out the version of the document that references this clause, I'd be happy to comply. Otherwise, I believe we may be discussing a preference rather than a policy. Best regards, Jake Whitman. I printed 2 copies. One I dropped in her mailbox. The other I taped, politely, to the community bulletin board outside the rec center, just to make sure any future regulation enforcements could be publicly verified. That's when the real games began. First, a warning about my lawn height, measured down to the half-inch. Then, a noise complaint filed after Tyler played his guitar on the porch one Saturday afternoon. The final straw was the accusation that my chickens were unauthorized livestock and had been making aggressive noises. Aggressive chickens. Named Brittany Pex and Hen Stefani. She sent me an official violation packet. 3 citations. Potential fines. Mandatory HOA compliance conference. You'd think we were dealing with nuclear materials, not poultry and paint. But by then, I knew better than to see this as random enforcement. This was personal. Karen had declared war. And while most neighbors grumbled quietly behind closed doors, I was the only one dumb enough to stand up to her in writing, and that made me target number 1. I started documenting everything. Photos, timestamps, letters. I even installed a small outdoor camera pointed at my mailbox, just to catch her in the act of posting notices after dark, which she did, by the way, wearing gardening gloves and a visor like she was running a covert HOA sting operation. Tyler, ever the optimist, kept saying, "She'll get bored eventually." But I could see it in her eyes every time I caught her peeking from behind her blinds. This wasn't boredom. This was obsession. And I started to feel it too, the pressure creeping into my shoulders every time I checked the mail. The way my chest tightened when I saw another envelope with the HOA logo. It wasn't just annoying anymore. It was exhausting. Like playing chess against someone who only knows one move but plays it every single day until your nerves wear thin and you start making mistakes just to make it stop. I tried ignoring it. I tried smiling through it. I even tried attending one of the HOA meetings, a beige nightmare of folding chairs, sugar-free cookies, and passive-aggressive glares. Karen sat at the head of the table like she was presiding over the Supreme Court. She opened with a prayer to protect the integrity of our neighborhood, and closed by scolding a teenager for parking a little too far onto the curb. After that meeting, one of the older residents, Mr. Dunley, came up to me in the parking lot, leaned in and whispered, "Don't fight her. We tried once years ago. It didn't end well." Didn't end well? What the hell did that mean? But by then I was already in too deep. I wasn't going to repaint my fence, silence my son, or send my hens off to chicken jail just because Karen had an aesthetic vendetta and a god complex. I stood my ground. And that's when I started noticing something strange. Unmarked vehicles slowing near my house. A drone hovering one afternoon, low enough to rattle the tree branches. And Karen? She stopped speaking entirely. No more letters. No warnings. Just silence. That silence felt louder than all her laminated threats combined. Something had shifted. I just didn't know how far it would go. At first, the silence almost felt like a win. No new letters. No drive-by inspections. Karen had gone quiet, and for a fleeting week or two I let myself believe maybe, just maybe, she'd finally moved on. Maybe she found a new target. Maybe the bylaws got too heavy to carry. I even took Tyler out for burgers to celebrate what we called the ceasefire of week 12. I should have known better. Karen doesn't retreat. She regroups. The first sign was subtle, a bright orange flag stuck into the soil near my property line. Then another one. Then 5 more, all in a perfect straight line cutting across the back edge of my yard. Survey markers. Not official ones. No city stamp. No permit notice. Just there. Like she was claiming ground. I caught her in the act one morning, crouching near the fence in a sun hat and khakis like she was cosplaying as Indiana Jones. HOA edition. "Karen." I called out. She didn't even flinch. Just adjusted her tape measure and replied, "You've encroached 6 inches onto common property. This needs to be corrected immediately or I'll be forced to report you to the county." I stared at her. 6 inches of mulch? Seriously? "It's a matter of principle," she said. "And precedent." Precedent. That was her favorite word, the magic spell she used to turn nonsense into law. I tried reasoning. I tried citing my property plat, even offered to bring in a real surveyor to settle it once and for all. But Karen didn't want resolution. She wanted a paper trail. And she got one. The next week I received a notice of common area violation, complete with threats of fines, up to $500 per day until rectified. That's when Tyler stepped in. He marched into the HOA office, a converted garage space behind Karen's house where she held her monthly meetings/reigns of terror, and demanded to see documentation. Of course she refused. Said he wasn't on the deed. Said she didn't have to show him anything. That same night, someone dumped a pile of compost over our mailbox. No note. No prints. Just a rotting heap of banana peels and onion skins soaking into my bills. I filed a complaint with the city. They shrugged. It's a civil matter, they said. Take it up with your HOA. Which meant, Karen. Again. That's when things turned truly bizarre. Inspections began happening at odd hours. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. to find a note stuck to my storm door. Unapproved lighting fixture spotted. Must be removed. At 10 p.m., someone rang the bell and ran, leaving a citation for after-dark gardening, whatever that means. It felt like psychological warfare. Tyler called it low-level terrorism in pastels. I tried contacting the rest of the HOA board, all two of them. One was Karen's bridge partner, the other a semi-retired dentist who claimed to never vote against her judgment. No help there. So I went bigger. I contacted the local HOA oversight office, submitted a formal complaint, attached every document, timestamp, and photo I had. It took hours. Weeks passed. Then finally a response. Your complaint has been received. We will review the case within 90 business days. 90 days. Meanwhile, Karen was out here drawing property lines with garden flags and threatening to fine me for the height of my bird feeder. Then came the inspection teams. Groups of 2 or 3 clipboard-holding residents, handpicked by Karen, who'd walk around the neighborhood in matching polo shirts with GVOA Community Watch ironed on the back. They never smiled. They never waved. They just stared, scribbled, and moved on. One of them took pictures of my driveway while I was in it, washing the truck. Is this legal? I asked. HOA has full authority to inspect for violations. One of them replied, eyes hidden behind dollar store aviators. Page 18, Section 4B. I read that section later. It said something about common walkway cleanliness. Nothing about photographing someone's car like you're building a criminal case. Meanwhile, the neighbors started acting weird. More withdrawn. Some wouldn't make eye contact. Others whispered their support at night like we were living under an actual dictatorship. Hang in there, one guy murmured while jogging past. We all know she's nuts. We just can't. Can't what? Speak up? Push back? Apparently not. Because Karen had created a system that fed on fear and paperwork, and no one wanted to be the next name on her clipboard hit list. Except me. Because I'd already crossed the line. And I was about to cross it again. It wasn't about paint anymore. Or mulch. Or chickens. It was about control. One woman's obsession with enforcing her idea of perfection, and her absolute hatred of anyone who didn't bend. And I was just about done bending. I didn't set out to become the resistance leader of Golden Valley Meadows. All I wanted was a peaceful yard, a quiet home, and the freedom to plant my stupid tomatoes without getting fined into bankruptcy. But when someone pushes you long enough, pokes, prods, violates every reasonable boundary, eventually you stop defending and start fighting back. My turning point didn't come during an HOA meeting or a shouting match. It came when my son found a bullet casing under our maple tree. Tyler brought it to me, dirt still clinging to the base. Found it behind the chicken coop, he said, holding it like evidence. You think this is hers? I didn't have to think. I knew. That casing hadn't come from some hunter passing through the woods. We don't have hunters. This neighborhood is boxed in by sidewalks and speed bumps. That casing came from Karen. From her little balcony perch where she tracked helicopters like they were enemy aircraft. That was the moment everything crystallized. This wasn't about bylaws anymore. This wasn't about neighborhood aesthetics or lawn height or poultry noise levels. This was about power, unchecked, festering, and now armed. Karen had moved from paper citations to loaded rifles. From passive-aggressive to borderline paramilitary. And no one, not a single soul in the neighborhood, was doing anything. Because she'd built a fortress made of fear, bureaucracy, and gossip, and somehow convinced everyone inside it that they were safe. I decided right then, we weren't going to live like that anymore. So I started planning. Not revenge. Not sabotage. Something cleaner. Smarter. Documented. Because if there's one thing Karen loves, it's paperwork. And if I was going to burn her paper kingdom down, I needed my own stack to light the match. Step 1 was building a timeline. Every violation, every citation, every incident down to the minute. I pulled emails, dated photos, camera footage. Tyler helped, he's methodical like that. We turned my home office into a war room. We even gave it a name, Operation No More Clipboard. Step 2 was reaching out, quietly, to the other residents. Not with rants. With facts. I printed packets and slipped them into mailboxes after dark. Each one included excerpts from Karen's letters, comparisons with the actual HOA rules, and a form to sign. If you've experienced harassment, intimidation, or false citation by the HOA, share your story. And the stories came. Mr. Dunley had been fined for hanging a flagpole without pre-approval. He'd submitted the form 4 times. No one ever responded. The Wilsons had been cited for visible toys in their front yard. A little Tykes plastic car. Their toddler cried when they had to hide it in the garage. Even the church down the block had been warned about unauthorized parking lot usage when they let kids skateboard there after school. Karen had built an empire of fear, one fine at a time, but no one had connected the dots. Until now. Step 3, go public. But not loud. Not yet. I submitted a petition to the city HOA review board, this time with over 25 co-signers. That meant something. It forced them to accelerate the timeline. They scheduled a formal hearing in person downtown. Then I got strategic. I invited the local news. Just a tip. Anonymously. Rogue HOA president harassing residents, interfering with emergency response. Possible firearm incident under investigation. 2 days later, a reporter called me directly. I didn't give them everything, just enough to make them curious. The moment I mentioned a bullet casing and a rescue helicopter, their tone changed. Do you have evidence? I've got timestamps, photos, and about a dozen neighbors who'll confirm she aimed that rifle skyward. Silence. Then, we'll be there. I knew Karen would never see it coming. She thought she had all the power because she had the bylaws memorized. But here's the thing about tyrants. They forget that power built on intimidation crumbles under exposure. Shine a light on the cracks and the whole fake marble facade starts to fall apart. The night before the hearing, I stood on my back porch, coffee in hand, staring at her house. Lights out. Quiet. Like a fortress before the siege. I whispered to Tyler, tomorrow we drag the HOA queen off her throne. He grinned. Think she'll bring the rifle? I hope not, I said. But if she does, the press will be rolling. And just like that, the war shifted. I wasn't a passive target anymore. I was done waiting for the next notice, the next complaint, the next thinly veiled threat. Tomorrow we were going on the offensive. The morning of the hearing, the air buzzed with that same strange tension you feel before a summer storm, still hot, thick with something just about to snap. I wore a plain button-up and jeans, left the house early, and didn't even bother to look toward Karen's place. Tyler rode shotgun, a thick folder of evidence in his lap, earbuds in but music off. He wasn't talking. He was focused. We both were. City Hall wasn't some marble-columned courthouse, just a squat beige building with a flickering motion sensor light and water-stained ceiling tiles. But that day it felt like the center of the universe, especially when I saw the news van parked out front. They came. Not just one reporter, 2. One from the local station, another stringer from the regional paper. And when they spotted me, it didn't take long for the camera guy to start rolling. You're Mr. Whitman, right? Yep. You're the one who filed the complaint against your HOA president? Among others, I said. I just brought the highlighters. Inside the council room, the air conditioning struggled against the crowd. Not just neighbors but a few city officials, 3 members of the HOA oversight board, and, finally, Karen Whitmore herself. Dressed in a beige suit that matched her hair and her personality, she carried a stack of binders like they were battle gear. She didn't acknowledge me. She didn't have to. Her glare did all the talking. The proceedings started like any dry civic meeting. Names read, minutes approved, coffee slurped. Then the chair called my name. I stood, cleared my throat, and began the presentation. It started small, a timeline of incidents, nothing dramatic. But then I flipped to the images. Screenshots of inspection teams photographing driveways, copies of citations for absurd violations, the bullet casing we'd found. I showed footage from my security cam, Karen approaching my fence with a measuring tape at 6:14 a.m., and again at 9:37 p.m. The room grew quieter with every slide. Then came the bombshell. I pulled out the footage of the helicopter day. It wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough. The distant crack of gunfire. The helicopter dipping. Karen on her balcony, rifle clearly visible, raising it skyward. Gasp. One board member dropped her pen. Karen shot to her feet. This is out of context. You can't prove I fired anything. Do you deny that's you in the video? I asked calmly. No. I mean, yes. That's me, but I was... She stopped herself. It's not what it looks like. It looks like you fired at a rescue helicopter, Karen. That's when the city rep stepped in. "Mrs. Whitmore, are you aware that discharging a firearm within city limits is a felony? And aiming at an aircraft, rescue or otherwise, is a federal offense?" Silence. Karen blinked. "I didn't aim at it. I was testing the scope. In my yard. On my property." "Where you also oversee dozens of residents as an HOA president," the chairwoman added. "Do you have a firearms permit?" Karen's face flushed crimson. "This isn't about guns. This is about a man who painted his fence the wrong color." And just like that she lost the room. The audience broke into whispers. Someone snorted. One of the reporters started scribbling furiously. Tyler leaned over and muttered, "That's the sound of a throne toppling." The board called a recess. Karen stormed out, binders clutched to her chest like they might still protect her. She didn't come back. During the break, neighbors approached me, people who had never dared speak up before. They thanked me. Quietly. One even offered to mow my lawn free for a month, as a thank you. It was like someone had lifted a spell. Then came the final blow. 2 uniformed officers entered the room. Not city cops, federal agents. They weren't loud. Just professional. "Come." They asked for Karen. When they heard she'd left, one of them turned to the HOA chair and said, "We'll be speaking with her regarding the incident involving the helicopter. There's now an active investigation." Word spread fast. By the time Tyler and I made it home, half the neighborhood was buzzing. I had 12 unread texts, 3 voicemails, and 1 envelope taped to my door. "HOA president temporarily removed pending investigation." The next day Karen was gone. Not arrested, not yet, but definitely gone. Her car vanished from the driveway. Curtains drawn. No more morning measuring routines, no clipboard patrols, no surveillance team snapping photos of my hens. I stood in the backyard that evening watching the sun dip low behind the tree line, and for the first time in months I breathed. Tyler clinked his lemonade glass against mine. "To Operation No More Clipboard," he said. I smiled. "To freedom. And to Brittany Peck's." And somewhere in the distance I swear I heard a chicken cluck in approval. The days following Karen's disappearance felt surreal, like someone had peeled off a thick layer of plastic wrap from the entire neighborhood and suddenly, we could all breathe again. The air even smelled different. No more passive-aggressive note cards, no more shadowy HOA patrols pretending they were the Secret Service. The fear had evaporated, and in its place was something almost forgotten around here: laughter. People began stepping out of their homes like survivors after a long storm. I saw Mrs. Oliver hanging wind chimes on her porch again. The Wilsons dragged their toddler's little Tyke's car right back into the front yard and set up a chalk obstacle course on the sidewalk. Mr. Dunley raised his flagpole higher than ever, saluted it and shouted, "Try and find me now, Karen." I swear I saw a tear in his eye. Or maybe it was just the sun. The temporary HOA president, a quiet but kind woman named June from down the street, immediately suspended all fines and citations under active review. She opened a town hall-style meeting, where neighbors could finally speak without being glared into submission. We aired grievances, laughed over past absurdities, and for the first time actually talked about making things better instead of just enforcing rules. It was like someone flipped the channel from dystopian drama to feel-good sitcom. As for Karen, the last anyone heard, she was cooperating with federal investigators. There were rumors she fled to a cousin's house in Nevada. Another neighbor claimed she was trying to scrub her online presence. Good luck with that, considering the local news had now run 2 full segments on the HOA sniper of Golden Valley. Apparently, some rescue agencies were also reviewing flight records and launching their own internal investigation. One news blog even labeled her Karen of the Skies. A meme circulated showing her aiming a rifle at a pigeon with the caption, "Did you file a flight plan, sir?" And me? I didn't want revenge. I didn't want her arrested just for spite. I wanted peace. I wanted my backyard back. I wanted to live in a place where you didn't need legal counsel to grow cucumbers. Tyler stayed for a few more weeks after the hearing. He helped me repaint the back fence, same olive green but this time with neighbors cheering us on. We planted more tomatoes, rebuilt the compost bin, and added a little wooden sign to the chicken coop that read, "Officially non-aggressive livestock." I even added a wind spinner shaped like a helicopter, just a little passive-aggressive flair to remind us how far we'd come. The bullet casing? I kept it. Not out of fear but as a reminder. It sits on my desk, next to a photo of Tyler and me, covered in dirt and laughing while holding a garden hose like it's a fire hose. Every time I glance at it, I remember 2 things. 1, silence is not peace. And 2, sometimes, It just takes one person standing up to a tyrant with a clipboard for a whole community to remember their spine. It wasn't about me being a hero. I wasn't. I was just a tired dad who didn't want to back down one more inch. But the truth is, that little act of defiance, questioning a fake rule, taping a response to a bulletin board, daring to document, it was enough to break the spell. Funny how these things start. A fence. A chicken. A lawn citation. And before you know it, you're standing in front of a city board explaining how your HOA president almost committed aviation homicide in the name of suburban tranquility. Would I do it again? Hell yes. And if the day ever comes when another clipboard warrior rises to power, I'll be ready, paintbrush in one hand, sarcasm in the other. Because this is my home, my fence, my chickens. And no one gets to shoot at helicopters over my backyard and walk away like it's just Tuesday.